Hello and welcome to this installment of Talkin Trim. I'm Jonathon Skinner and today we're looking at the front seat covers for the Triumph TR2 and TR3 models, and we're also going to be touching on the hardware items, so things such as the seat frames, the base spring units, the padding kit and the tacking strips. And most importantly, we're going to be doing a bit of an overview of the differences between the actual seat covers for the TR2 and TR3 models, and then importantly as well the differences between the seat frames, especially related to the later TR3A. So when it comes to the actual seat covers themselves, we are not talking about TR3A style seat covers at all. They did differ quite radically, and I'll touch on that when I get to the seat frame side of things. But the actual covers between the TR2s and TR3s were extremely similar, but they were different. And it's important to note that difference because we are one of the only companies, if not the only company in the industry, that acknowledge this difference and do offer different seat covers for them. Now, as a basic overview, the ones in cream, which is our parchment colour to the left there, are TR2. The ones in tan, which is that sort of browny colour, are TR3. And they are very, very similar. And in fact, you could get them to fit the hardware items, so they would effectively be universal between the TR2 and TR3 models, but they were different, and it's an important difference to distinguish, like I say, because not many other companies, if any, actually acknowledge that difference there, so I will be touching on that. Now let's start where we normally do with the actual seat covers themselves. So let me just zoom in. There we are. Right, so like I say, the cream versions on the left, which are parchment colour, are TR2s. The tan on the right are TR3. They've actually both been done in upgrade options in terms of the materials. So just to give you an overview of what we can offer at one end of the scale everything in vinyl, so all of the seat cover would be vinyl. At the other end of the scale we can offer everything in leather, which is what these both are. So that is our full leather option. There is no vinyl in that at all. In between you have what we refer to as leather-faced. They are the OEM spec, factory spec for most of the cars that left the factory. Not all of them. Some of them did just leave with vinyl as the trim, or vinide leathercloth as it's often referred to back there. It is actually a different material, that, but we can offer that if you want, but most people get superseded to vinyl. Ambler is a bit more suitable. Won't go into too much detail on that, but a decent majority of the cars from the factory would have left with what we refer to as leather-faced seats. This, confusingly, is often cited as leather on the heritage certificate, and also other companies out there, other suppliers out there, do often refer to it purely as leather on their websites. So if you are comparing apples with apples, if there is such a thing in the interior trim side of this business, don't compare competitors' prices for leather with our full leather. When they say leather, they mean leather-faced. And by that, I mean basically the bits that touch your body are leather when you sit in the seat, but the surrounds and the backs are vinyl. And that's an important way to distinguish the seats, because we can offer an upgrade option, which is where everything is done in leather and there is no vinyl, which is what these are here. So I'll go over those parts in a second anyway when we get to it. But it's worth noting on that, really, pricing is the worst metric you can kind of do when you're comparing and contrasting seat covers. It should all be down to quality workmanship, reputation, knowledge of these cars, materials, quality of materials, etc. And that's where we come up trumps. We've been doing Triumph since my father started the company in 1980. We do them day in, day out, week in, week out. We've worked on some very famous restorations. In fact, we've done the three first TRs off the production line. So we did the prototype, I'm going to get the pronunciation of this wrong, is it Jabaka, the one that got the land speed record at the time. So we did the interior trim for that in collaboration with Protec Engineering. And then we have also contributed to both TS1 and TS2 in terms of interior trim parts, so bear that in mind. We've also won various awards all around the world, both concours and just best in show, etc. So no one quite does TRs like we do, so bear that in mind. Right, so let's dive into these. Like I say, these over here, the TR2s, are the sort of parchment colour, and they've been done in full leather, and they've actually been done in smooth leather. Now, this is a prime opportunity. Let's see the difference here. So smooth doesn't have much of a grain on the surface at all. whereas grained, which is what the tan ones are, does. So you can see the difference there between them. Let's try and get it in focus. So like I say, both of them are upgrade spec kits, full leather, but they've been done in obviously different colours but different grain finishes. Smooth is slightly more expensive than grained. See our website for more details or contact us directly. To look at the seat covers, I'll kind of do them together as such because a lot of the principles are the same, and then I'll point out the differences. So genuine tuck and roll pleats, they get sewn and pleated, genuine tuck and roll pleats into 17mm scrum back foam. So they literally go in and out and round, so actually a groove in there, whereas a lot of other people out there, they'll just literally sort of stitch down and do a fake pleat. So they're genuine tuck and roll pleats. You get foam padding on the surrounds as well, which helps attain a nice, neater finish when trimming. Then they obviously get piped, and the surrounds put on them. They have the retainer on the cushion base there as well. So the cushion bases are very, very similar to one another, but the main difference is the depth of that and that, which we'll come to in a second. Let's just touch on the backrest now. So the squabs, as some people refer to them. So again, genuine tuck and roll pleats. Again, these surrounds are foamed, as you can see on the side there, which again helps attain a nicer finish during the trimming process. Now, they sort of buckle up like that, and that is just because the way they're sewn, but when you come to trim them, that will all get lost during the trimming process under tension, so don't worry about that element of things. And you can see there is a subtle difference between them. They buckle up a bit more than those, but actually they do end up going onto the same seat frame. Again, the other difference is the retainer as well. So they both get these finishing tabs on the side, but they're slightly different shapes to one another. And then the retainer on the TR2 is shorter, on the TR3 is longer, but again, it's all kind of lost during the fitment process. But again, you have to remember that these they were evolving as they were making the seat covers for these cars. So they would have started off with this design here and morphed into this one here. Sometimes the evolution was obvious and worked, other times it didn't. But it's always that sort of constant argument. We have or debate rather, we have obviously original samples left, right and centre in this place, and we've patterned up for them. We've used templates for years, so we know that they sort of work, and we've worked with some of the finest restorers in the world. For example, say Mark Macy over in Ohio does arguably the best TR restorations in the world, and we've supplied his kits for decades now. And it's working with guys like that we get good feedback on bits and bobs. So we've tried to improve patterns where possible to make them easier to fit and to change certain elements of them. But ultimately, we've tried to obviously stay true to the original specifications on these bits and bobs. So some people will sort of say, especially given what I mentioned earlier about the confusion within the industry of people offering the same seat cover effectively for the TR2s and TR3s, they'll mention about the retainer, and it's that element of, well, what do you want? Do you want it to be original, or do you want it to be more suitable? So we do have, we've actually got one client over in Italy that we've supplied kits for decades now, and whenever he's ordering a TR2 interior, he actually asks us to use the TR3 spec seat covers, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, so there are subtle differences in the backrest squab there, but genuine tuck and roll pleats, piping around the outside edge and the inside edge there. Now it's worth noting that the piping on these seats, a few things related to them. So TR2 was always self-coloured, i.e. the piping matched the main trim, so parchment and parchment in this example here. TR3s, they switched the majority of the cars to white piping, both on the inside and outside. So white there and white there. Same again, white and white. These have been done to same matching colour spec because that's what the customer wanted. But originally from the factory, you'd have white there on the TR3s, but not the TR2 models. So bear that in mind. While we're still on the subject of piping, we use leathercloth where possible for our piping. Leathercloth, also known as vinide, sometimes referred to as Rexin, was the original piping material used. It's very similar to vinyl, although it's thinner, but definitely more robust. It doesn't stretch like vinyl does. And because it's thinner, because it's got a different backing on it, it doesn't kind of grip and scuff when you sort of put your nail down it like that. Whereas vinyl, because it's effectively thicker, when you wrap it around such a small space like that, it becomes bigger, so more obvious, which one, doesn't look right, but two, very, very easy to scuff when it's put over such a small area like piping. And like I say, for pretty much all of our colours, I'd say 80 to 90% of our colours, we have leathercloth piping specifically made. Unfortunately, for some colours, no leathercloth is available in that colour, and therefore we have to revert to vinyl. But other companies out there, they often just use vinyl for their pipings because they don't want to have to stock another material. But these are the little crucial things that we're known for within the industry, is that attention to detail and suitability of materials and things like that. So all of these are good examples because the piping on all of them is leathercloth, and we get it specifically made. Worth checking out other videos on my YouTube channel and our blog handbook area, because I do go into details of the piping that we use, and you'll see just the lengths and depths that we go to with these sorts of things. Now, it's worth noting at that point that don't assume other suppliers go to anywhere near the same levels of depth of suitability to their products and things. They do not. We're a leading force in the industry when it comes to that sort of thing, and that's what we're well known for. So that covers piping. Now let's talk about the original material specifications. Like I say, both of these have been done upgrade full leather, so absolutely everything on the seats is leather apart from the piping, which is always leathercloth where colours allow. Obviously the other main option at the other end of the scale would be everything in vinyl. Same principle again, everything would be vinyl apart from the leathercloth piping where colours allow. Now if you went for the leather, shall we say, in inverted commas, spec, which is the factory spec for a lot of the cars, or leather-faced as we refer to them. Basically, the bits that touch your body as you're sat in the seat would be leather. So pleated panels would be leather, horseshoes would be leather, pleated panels, horseshoe, pleated panel, horseshoe, pleated panel, horseshoe will be leather. All the other elements, the surround here, the retainer, the back of the backrest, they would all be vinyl. So that's the most commonly seen spec, and like I say, that's what we refer to as leather-faced. Other companies refer to it as leather. Heritage Certificate often referred to as leather as well, not to be confused with our full leather option, which is this, where everything is leather. Same again on these bits of material here that you get for retrimming the surround of the frame. They would be vinyl for both the vinyl seats and for the leather-faced versions, but they would be leather for the full leather spec, which is what these are. And actually for these bits here, we have thinned and skived them down. You can see, let's do a comparison here. So same hide of leather, but you can see one of them have been thinned down. Skiving is effectively the process of shaving the backing off leather to make it thinner. We have the luxury of our own in-house leather skiving machine. I think we're the only ones in the restoration industry that actually have their own on site, and we do that as standard. If a piece of leather needs to be skived down to make it easier or more pliable to trim, then we do that as standard, all within the normal price spectrum that you're getting. Again, not any other companies I know will go to that level of detail with these sorts of things, and that's great as well for, say, the cappings and whatnot on the TR2s and TR3s, so bear that in mind. Now to the obvious differences between the seat. We've mentioned a brief difference between the backrest horseshoes there, but that's neither here nor there in the grand scheme of things. The main difference, and I have done other videos showcasing this element, is related to the depth of the horseshoe on the cushion base, the bit your bum goes on. So on the TR2s, it was much narrower, and basically when you put it onto the seat spring base unit, that piping was on the perimeter of the spring. It kind of sat on there. However, they at some point, and this is very much a subject of debate when it happened, but certainly by the time they got to the TR3s, they extended the depth of this, as you can see, quite considerably. There's a very rough guide mark up there. We've got the piping roughly in the same place there. And then basically this piping sunk down underneath the spring. And like I say, I have done another video, so do check out the link at the end of this one showing that it kind of went down and round like that. And presumably, again, this is an evolution. They probably realised that when you sat on the spring with the cover on top, the piping dug into the back of your knees, which was probably, one, uncomfortable, but two, it probably wore away the piping quite significantly. Whereas if it ducked down below slightly, it didn't. One, it was more comfortable and it didn't wear away as much. That's an educated guess as to why they made that change, but they definitely made the change. The only thing I don't know, because it's not very clear, we have trawled the original parts books and there's no obvious chassis number change when it happened, is we don't know when it happened, we just know it did happen. So as a general rule of thumb, if you're ordering a TR2, we will supply this spec in terms of that distance there, and TR3 accordingly, different spec, slightly wider one there. Of course, like our well-known Italian customer, if you would prefer us to use the later spec, then just say so. It's not a problem at all. But as standard, unless you specifically told us to, we will always revert to the what we refer to as the obvious original TR2 patterns on that there. So I think that covers the actual seat covers themselves. Now, if we go on to the seat hardware, again, we're just talking TR2s and TR3s. We are not talking about 3As at this point in time. The seat frames were identical between them. The only difference was the TR2s often left with two fixed frames, i.e. they did not tilt forward. Now, I've actually got an original here. And as you can see, that does not move. I've got my foot on the bottom there. There is no tilt mechanism on that at all, whereas this one actually is a TR3, but that's showing the, sorry, TR3A. This is showing the fact that it didn't tilt. So a lot of the TR2s left with two fixed seats like that, but then they changed to potentially one fixed seat and one tilting seat. And this is actually an original TR3 frame, which is effectively the same as a TR2. It is the same as a TR2, and that you can see has a tilt element on it as well. So basically for the TR2s, some would have left with everything fixed, and some other TR2s would have left with one fixed and one tilt. When it went into the TR3s, that was generally the rule of thumb. You had one tilt and one fixed. And this is where these bits come into play here. Now, we normally ask our customers what they've got, but effectively, if you've got two tilt frames, you'll end up with slightly different numbers of these pieces here. But they're the materials there for retrimming the surrounds of those, and the quantities and the sizes changed on whether they were two tilts, one tilt, one fixed, or two fixed. So bear that in mind. And again, worth checking out video links at the end of this one, because we are going to be showcasing these tan seats fully trimmed up at some point as well. And actually, we've already got videos showing some TR2s fully trimmed up, so bear that in mind. So yeah, the seat frames effectively are the same. They're the same shapes. It was just merely the tilt versus non-tilt fixed versions that changed between them, but the overall shape of them was identical. The seat spring units were absolutely identical as well, between the TR2s and the TR3s. The seat padding kit was also identical between the TR2s and TR3s, as were the tacking strips. So bear that in mind. All of this is relevant for the TR2s and TR3s, but not the TR3As, and that is crucial. So let's first start with the seat spring base units. Let's just get that frame out of the way. I've just put this one in here. So, and again, please do check out our other video where we detail the difference between the seat springs that are offered on the early TRs here. But effectively, the TR2 and the TR3 seat spring, you can see, had a wider top edge. If you go over the top there, you can see that the very top is much further out and wider than the bottom, which sits in the spring there. So bear that in mind. Also, bear in mind that we're the only company that make this exact style here, and in fact all of our springs. There are some cheaply made Asian knockoffs, which, well, in my opinion, are absolutely awful. And I think if you go down a lot of the forums, you will see that they tend to agree with me as well. They wobble all over the place, whereas these are actually made to original specifications, and we supplied these ones since probably the late 80s. We supply them by the bucket load all around the world, so bear that in mind as well. But yeah, that's the springs there as they sit in the frame. Worth noting, whereas the seat covers, we sell them as a pair, so i.e. enough to do a car set's worth of seat covers. the spring units are sold singularly, so you will need 2 if you're doing a complete car. So bear that in mind. Then we go on to the foam padding kit. Now the foam padding kit consists of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And let me just show you how it kind of goes together. So let's start with the backrest squab. You have 2 pieces. You get this thick foam here, which as it was set up before, kind of sits into the back frame there. Obviously I can only do it one-handed, but again, I have done a video showcasing how that goes properly into the seat frame before it's trimmed up. And then you get some thin foam here, which trims this back section here. So that's for the backrest squab area. Then you get some pre-sewn scrim liner effectively, and that goes over the top of the spring, and that is used to, 1, protect the foam from the spring so it doesn't kind of scuff, and the same again with the cover, but 2, used to dictate the height that you want the spring to be. You want a good bit of resistance in that spring, but obviously it allows you to make, albeit small changes, to actually the height that you sit in the car. So bear that in mind as well. And again, I have done a video kind of detailing that. So once the scrim is on there, you then get this piece of medium thickness foam here, which sits on the top. And then you get this banana shaped piece here, which wraps around the circumference there. And then you're basically ready to trim up the base element of it. So effectively the base is trimmed completely separately to the frame. You would take the spring out, you'd load it up with the scrim and the foam, and then you would trim the cover to the spring units using hog rings on the underside. Again, please do let us know if you need any photos or guides on that. I'm more than happy to help you or your professional trimmer on that side of things. But that's how you effectively trim them up. Then when everything is said and done, you're placing it back into the seat frame, and then the backrest squab is actually trimmed to the seat frame effectively. Obviously the main thing you need to be making sure you do is lining up the pleats between the 2 of them, so bear that in mind. Obviously if you want us to do the work, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, that's the padding kit. Now it's worth noting on the padding kit, we supply foam. Originally from the factory it was like a horsehair material, which we do use. We use it on our E-types, but for years we have used, it's a mixture of wadding and horsehair originally. But for years we've used foam, and we do that intentionally. It's not because we don't want to use horsehair per se. Like I say, we do stock the material, rubberized horsehair, fibre hair, for our E-type restorations. But we found through years of my father trimming these exact seats and cars that actually foam was better. It's less messy and it's easier to attain a nicer finish. So we do revert to foam by design on that one there. Seat foam kit is sold as a kit, i.e. enough to do 2 seats is how we sell it. So whereas the springs are sold singly and you'll need 2 of them, the seat foam kit is enough for 2 seats. Although in this video I've only got enough space for 1 of it, so just bear that in mind. Then we got the tacking strips. Tacking strips are made out of hardboard, and they come in a package like this, sort of Aerofix, to protect them. So you effectively just break them out. They come with all the pot rivets on them, and they are placed at different points in the frame. You get some that kind of go around the base element of the backrest there, they bend round. You do need to soak them in water first to allow them to bend round. They're not flexi-ply, they are just hardboard, so they have a bit of flex in them, but not much. So soak them in water for about 20 minutes so they're nice and soft, and then gently bend them round, sort of anchor them in place, and then they will dry to that shape. We are considering updating to flexi-ply. When we last did it, the price point didn't work for a lot of people, so we reverted back to hardboard, which it works for the most part, but just bear that in mind. So you get those bits that sort of go round, and then a lot of the other pieces are for the underside of the frame underneath here. Now it's worth noting at this point that the original frameworks is what these are templated for. The aftermarket ones, which come and go, they're not always available. They use slightly different designs on them, so you might have to tinker with them slightly to get them to work on certain seat frames, but it's very, very straightforward to do. So if you're coming up a cropper and you can't work it out, do let me know, but don't be surprised if you do have to make some very small cuts and edits to them, but very, very straightforward to do. So bear that in mind. So that's the tacking strip, which again is sold completely separately, but it is sold as a car set, so i.e. 2 seats, a pair of seats. So that is effectively all the seat hardware element things. Now let's talk about the frames. Like I say, TR2 and TR3 frames are identical, only difference being tilt versus fixed. Not to be confused with the TR3A seat frames. And this is where a lot of confusion in the industry comes in. Mainly because TR3A is kind of a bit of a abbreviation short name for the TR3 later versions. I don't think officially it was ever called a 3A, but it's kind of been its adopted name. I might be wrong on that, but that's what I've been led to believe. And so you often get, unfortunately, the big wholesalers in the industry, no names mentioned, labelling up their seat frames as TR3s when they mean 3As. And unfortunately, they have been selling them on their websites incorrectly. They're saying that the TR2s and the TR3s and the TR3As, the seat frames are identical. They are not. They are quite different. Now, you would get away with the base element. You can get the springs to fit inside effectively, but the backrest is where the main difference happens. And this is an original, I think, TR2 or TR3, I forget which. Let me move that and get this one. I'll get the spring out of the way. Move this. Now this is an original TR3 seat frame that a customer over in America has sent us. Now, if you put them side by side, you can see the difference straight away, but for those that can't necessarily see quite as clearly, basically the TR2 and TR3s was quite a bit wider. It had ears almost going round, whereas the TR3A was a lot pointier. And the easiest way of doing and showing this is we've done a couple of measurements here. So we've measured down from the very top beading element of the frame here, down to almost where this first groove is here, about 7 centimetres. And then at that point there, from left to right, following the curvature of the frame using flexi tape, you will get from the very edge beading to the very edge beading along that curve about 40 centimetres. So not straight across, not how the crow flies, is it? It's the same, but literally following the curvature there is about 40 centimetres. The TR2 and TR3 seat frame, this one here, from the beading to roughly this first ridge here is about 8 centimetres. And then at that point, again, from the very outside to the very outside is about 46 centimetres. So basically at this point here, it's about 3 centimetres each side different, or 6 centimetres over the whole one. Same again, we've done a few more measurements coming down. So from the very top to the second beading here on the TR2 and TR3, you can see it's about 19 centimetres. And then at that point there, it's about 55.5 centimetres from left to right. Bit of an approximation there, whereas this one's 52. So it starts coming into the same kind of realm at that point, but it's these top parts here where it's really different. And that's what catches people out, because they end up ordering seat frames from very well-known suppliers that perhaps don't have the attention to detail that they should. And they end up ordering seat covers from us and they don't fit. Well, they do, but they fit terribly. You end up with, if you put them onto the TR3A frames, you end up with baggy Mickey Mouse ears, we call them. We've just got a massive piece of material there. You can't get them to work. There's no way of getting to work without massively altering the seat frames. So bear that in mind. We've heard some and witnessed some absolute horror stories where luckily customers have managed to sort of salvage part of the top part of their frame, cut it away and weld it onto there. It's not ideal, but it will do. So yeah, just bear that in mind, because this is one of the reasons I've done this video, is to really showcase the difference between. You can really see how much wider they are there from that from that view there. So bear that in mind with that side of things. And like I say, the TR3A seat frames are readily available worldwide. TR2s and TR3s used to be available. I haven't seen them available in some time, so I don't think currently they are available. So just be careful what you're ordering on eBay or within the actual restoration industry, because people get this wrong so many times, it's unreal. So just do bear that in mind. We are planning on trying to get some of these seat frames made, so watch this space and do contact us if you do need them, because if we get a decent amount of interest for them, we will go ahead with that. but just bear that in mind there. It's also worth noting TR3A seat frames, you had slightly different ones with the springs. The springs were different because the seat covers were different, and you actually had two versions of springs. You had springs that were suitable for a frame like this where it's completely flat bottom, and then you had springs where this bottom bit here was recessed down and it had a hump in the spring there. But I won't go into too much detail because it's completely irrelevant to the TR2s and TR3s. So yeah, that's effectively the difference between the seat frames there. So like I say, TR2s and TR3s are completely interchangeable in terms of the seat frames. All the hardware here is exactly the same between them. The seat covers are different, subtly different, but they are effectively interchangeable. After that, it's down to the colour spec. Like I say, TR3s reverted to white piping throughout, whereas the TR2s used same colour piping throughout. Just to reference that in a book, as I normally do, got the Bill Piggott book here. So you've got TR2 here, and as you can see, it's got the same colour piping throughout. And then TR3 here had white piping. Now it's hard to say, interesting that that's got the 3A gearbox carpet, by the way, whereas this is the correct one for the TR2s and TR3s. Do see our other video for more info on that. But it's interesting as well, I would say both of those cushion bases are the same as each other apart from the piping element of things. And this is, well, it's hard to know. It's hard to know whether they're both original to the car. Certainly that carpet's not. So it's hard to know when if they've been retrimmed incorrectly or whether they left the factory like that. But also, do refer to my earlier comment, we're not entirely sure when they did the changeover. It might have been midway through or towards the end of the TR2s, which wasn't unheard of by any means. Their record keeping was fairly atrocious in the grand scheme of things. They made changes, didn't document them, and now obviously people are fanatical about originality, but it's impossible to be completely 100% accurate about originality unless you're literally looking at an original car and doing a like for like, because they made these changes often undocumented. Anyway, I think that covers it. I've done a fairly comprehensive one on there. We're running at almost 32 minutes now, so thank you if you stayed with me the whole way through. Please do obviously share any information that you might have on these particular topics. I am a student, shall we say. I do love to learn these things, and I'm never married to any of our ideas. We've updated things in our notes and our archives for years now, working with individuals, enthusiasts, but also people like Mark Macy, who really do know their stuff. So yeah, always interested to hear if someone else has any further information on the topics I've discussed. Other than that, thank you for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe and share with other classic car enthusiasts out there. Be sure to check out the videos at the end of this video for any other TR2 and TR3 related items, but obviously do check out the rest of our YouTube channel as there's loads of videos on there. Thanks for tuning in. Please remember to like, subscribe and share. Of course, make sure you tune in next time, and any restoration inquiries, just contact me directly. Look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.